Hi everyone, I'm Anthony Ruggiano, and I want to welcome everybody to Reform Gangsters, and I want to thank Scarlett's Alibi for the music intro. I hope everybody enjoys it. Hi, everyone. My name is Anthony Ruggiano, and in 1988, I was struggling with addiction, and I went into a treatment center. I set up a helpline number, which is 855-963-2113. That's 855-963-2113. That number, phones will be manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you're struggling with addiction, or you know someone that is struggling with addiction, please call that number and let me help. I will be hands-on. I will be personally involved in the person's recovery. They will meet me. They will spend time with me, and I will help them live a life beyond their wildest dreams. My name is Anthony Ruggiano Jr., and welcome to Reform Gangsters. If you enjoy my content, please click the like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell. And thank you to all my Patreon members. Without you, I wouldn't be here. If you want to become a member of reformgangsters.com, get early access to content and be part of the show. You are the members that pick what I talk about, so ask and get your Mafia history questions answered. So become a member, and I'll be happy to have you and answer your questions. And also on Saturday, May 20th, we're filming in New York City. If you want to be part of the studio audience, get your tickets at reformgangsters.com. I would love to have you there. Come join us. It'll be a meet and greet, and you can watch us tape our show live. So one of the questions I received, did Tommy Karate kill Frankie Burke? No, Tommy Karate had nothing to do with Frankie Burke's murder. It was Vito Scaglione, the barber from Father and Son, who killed Frankie Burke. Is it true that Anthony Bruno Delicata got the money from the Lufthansa? Well, I mean, he might have got some of it, because rumor was that Kathy winded up with the money. I mean, nobody knew for sure what happened to the money. I mean, the money was never recovered. The jewelry, we know my father fenced the jewelry, so we know where the jewelry went, but the cash was never recovered. We always kidded around with Kathy that she had all the money. I mean, after Lufthansa, she opened up a diamond exchange on Canal Street, you know, so I mean, that had to cost some money, but that was always the rumor, and he was married to her for a number of years. As a matter of fact, he was in prison in Allen with my father, and my father was the cook. He used to cook for them every night, and he used to eat with my father, and we used to go up on visits together. You know, we would meet up there in Allen with Kathy and I, and we would go into visits together to see my father and Anthony. So I'm sure if Kathy had Jimmy's money from Lufthansa, Anthony benefited from it. I mean, I would have if I was in a relationship with her. The question is, how close was Jimmy, Henry Hill, and Tommy DeSimone? He was standoffish with me, so I really don't know. I mean, I saw them together in Robert's Lounge. They had an after-hour club downstairs. I know Tommy and Jimmy were thick as thieves. They were very tight, very, very, very friendly. You know, they had a relation. You know, Henry was with them. He was in the same crew as them. He hung out with them. You know, was he as close to them as they were to each other? I don't really know. You know, he was part of that crew. I saw them together many times in like I said, in Robert's Lounge. And in Robert's Lounge in the basement was an after-hour club that I used to go to on Lefferts Boulevard a lot, and I would see them in there. So they were close. Well, they're as close as the movie made them out to be. I mean, I never saw them like that. I saw them drinking at bars together, so I guess they were close. But I don't think Henry was as close to Jimmy and Tommy as Jimmy and Tommy were to each other. That's the best way for me to answer that question.
Did you know Sally Ubatz?
Did I know Sally Ubats? Who asked that question?
That's and off to forget.
Sally Ubats. Do I know Sally Ubats? I know Sally Ubats since the fourth grade in 1963. He was one of my best friends. We went to, we grew up together. I baptized his daughter. We were like brothers. My father raised him. His father died at a young age. Yeah, I know him. How we gave him his name, Sally Ubats, because he had a fight one night with this guy in front of Tony's Pizzeria on 101st Avenue. And after the fight, everybody said he was Ubats. Do I know him? I know him like I know my brother.
Johnny Chinges says, can you imagine how tough your father was to take out Albert Anastasia?
My father, first of all, my father didn't take out Albert Anastasia. My father was on the other end of that. My father was devastated when Albert Anastasia got killed. My father had nothing to do with that. My father actually went to the mattress with O'Neill and everybody after Albert was killed. They tried to kill Carl Gambino. And then Carl took them all back and made them all part of the family again, because that was the right move to make on Carl's part. But my father and his crew never had anything to do with killing Albert. Only one of them did, Tato. And that's the guy that straightened out Sammy the Bull. Allegedly, he was in on the hit team that killed Tommy Rava, who was the captain of Neil and all of them at the time when Albert was assassinated. So my father didn't have anything to do with the assassination, but guys in his crew did, but not my father and Neil and Tony Lee. Them guys didn't have anything to do with Albert being killed. They were totally in the dark. I like to keep my stories on people I knew, people I had relationships with, people that I interacted with in one way or the other. So people throw a lot of names at me, ask me a lot of questions about people. This week I've been getting like Charlie Wagons, Charlie Fatico's name thrown at me, Ronnie One Arm's name thrown at me, a lot of names that I know. Those two, of course, I know, and some names I don't know. But one name I've been getting thrown at me is Willie Boy Johnson. And for those of you who don't know, Willie Boy Johnson's code name with the FBI was Wahoo. He was a federal informant for years and years and years. Nobody knew. And his code name was Wahoo because he was half American Indian, which a lot of people may not know. And how do I know this? And a lot of things people don't know is originally in the late 50s and early 60s, Willie Boy Johnson was not with the Gotti crew. He was with Tony Lee and my father. He was with them. He was a bookmaker and a Shylock, and he was a younger guy. He was a young man. And like when I was a little kid, my father would take me to his house. I remember he lived in an apartment across the street from a school. And I was a kid. I was 6, 7 years old. And my father would go to his house in the morning, on the weekends, early in the morning, and I remember they would be counting money and they would be talking. And he had 2 kids. He had a daughter and a son. And I would play with his kids. I would play with his 2 kids, his daughter. I don't remember their names. It was a lot of years ago. Later on, they had a falling out, I think, over money. He was a gambler. There was maybe money missing. And my father gave him a bad beating. My father hit him on the head with a car jack, and he ran away. He thought he was going to get killed. And he scampered off and he ran away. And it's funny because years later, he had a scar on his head, and he would tell everybody, look, Fat Andy did this to me. And he used to, he had a scar on his head from where my father hit him on the head with the jack of the car. Because back then, them jacks were not like today. Today, they don't even have jacks anymore on cars. Back then, the jacks were metal, and boom, they were like weapons, So, and he had the scar on his head, and he would tell everybody, and he would laugh about it. Look, this is Fat Andy did this to me. So after that incident, I was still young then. I wasn't mobbed up then. I wasn't working for anybody then. And he gravitated towards the Gotti crew because, it was East New York, and he winded up on record with Charlie. My father released him, and him and my father made up, him and Tony Lee, they all made up. Matter of fact, they made up and became good friends. But little did we know, he was giving information to the FBI concerning all of them, all the crews. So once I got into the street with my father, he was around. He was with the Gotti crew. He started selling heroin. He was a big money earner, big money, tough guy killer. I mean, he went on hits with Gotti. They They killed Tony Plate, who was a wise guy in Florida. He was in on that hit. Neil Delacroce loved him. He was always in the Ravenite all the time. Neil loved him, like I said. But it's funny when I think, being that I've been thinking about him lately, he was always getting abused, verbally abused by John, always. And like my father beat him up, cracked his head open. So, I'm not justifying what he did, but this is probably cooperating was like sort of like revenge. I don't know, because he used to get verbally abused by John, like embarrassing abused. John would tell him, "I'm going to chop you up, make souffrite out of you," and like John used to verbally bash him in front of everybody. And he didn't do anything or say boo, Willie Boy. But he was a big gambler. He was always in the racetrack. He was a big drug dealer. He had a lot of money. He always was good to me. I have to say that. He always was generous with me. He always, went out of his way to say hello to me, to pick up my tabs. To, if I was in the racetrack, he would throw me money when I was a kid. I mean, he was always good to me because he knew me from when I was a little kid. I mean, I used to play with his kids in his house. So he was always good to me, and he was always respectful to my father, but he was giving them information on everybody. And cases started coming down and nobody knew where the information was coming from. Like Lenny Dodone, who was a captain in the Gambino family, he had a warehouse with like untaxed cigarettes. And, Willie Boy used to go there to pick up loads of cigarettes off him. And then the warehouse got raided when he was in there, Lenny. He got 10 years with the feds for it, but nobody ever imagined it would be Willie Boy, that Willie Boy was giving them the information. Nobody, when my father got sentenced in Miami, they had a hearing for his sentencing and they told the judge, the FBI had people flying from New York, and they had a lot of information about murders, and we didn't know how they got this information. Like, where did they hear this from? How did they get this information? So what happened was, as everybody probably knows, because it's very well documented, he got indicted with John Gotti and everybody, and Nicky Carrazza and Lenny DiMaria and Jeannie Gotti. They had a big RICO case in Manhattan and in Brooklyn, and and it was going bad. And Jackalone, I think her name was, she was a woman from Queens. She was the assistant U.S. attorney on the case. And she, was probably losing the case. And she revealed that he was a confidential informant. She tried to force his hand to testify against him, and he refused. Because the deal he had was he would never testify. He would just give information, but he would never testify. He would never wear a wire, and he would never testify. And it's funny because when I think of it, he could have gave up a couple of murders and he didn't. So he really gave up. He picked and chose what he gave information to the FBI. So anyway, she revealed what he was, that he was a confidential informant, and he refused to testify. Matter of fact, he still sat at the table with them, from what I understand, from what I remember. And they got found not guilty. I don't remember if that was one of the cases that Sammy fixed or not, but they got found not guilty, and it was revealed that he was an informant. And he denied it to the end, and they got out of jail. He got out of jail. And he went to work. He went back to Brooklyn. He went right back to his house in Brooklyn. He didn't run away and hide. He had balls, like I said. He had balls, and he went back home, and he was murdered. Eddie Leno and them. The hit team was put together, and he was murdered coming out of his house on his way to work. He had a construction company, or he was doing something with construction, and he was murdered. There was a big bookmaker with us named Ronnie Cigars. He was my co-defendant on my last bookmaking case in 95. The last state case I had that I went to prison for. We went to prison together, actually, Ronnie Cigars and I. And he had a guy from Brooklyn that was all of a sudden started wagering big money with him, right? And he got like suspicious of this guy because the guy was betting one way, one amount of money. Then all of a sudden, the guy started stepping it up and stepping it up and stepping it up. And now the guy's coming in with big bets, and Ronnie got a little suspicious. So Ronnie sent for the guy because Ronnie had a feeling that it was Willie Boy, because Ronnie knew this guy was friends with Willie Boy before everything was revealed. We knew this guy was friendly with Willie Boy. and Ronnie sent for him, and in fact, it was Willie Boy's bets. So, you know, Ronnie told the guy, "What do you want to get me killed? What are you, crazy?" And Ronnie shut the guy out. You know what I mean? Ronnie shut the guy out. And Ronnie never said anything to anybody. I knew. I was the only, well, now everybody knows, but I was the only one that knew at the time, because, you know, Ronnie might have got killed over it. You know what I mean? Because they would have thought he knowingly took this guy's bets, knowing this guy was an informant. So anyway, Ronnie shut the guy out. I mean, he had to know he was getting murdered, but I mean, that's what kind of guy he was. He was just a ballsy guy, you know, and and they murdered him, you know, and that was the end of Wahoo. In the early 80s, we had a crap game on Mott Street with Charlie West and a whole bunch of guys, and I was working in there. My father had a piece of the game. This is before my father got arrested, and Willie Boy would come there, and John would abuse him. You know, John would abuse him, call him names. I'll chop you up. I'll make sufrit out of you. And people don't know what sufrit is. It's the insides of an animal. It's lungs and stomachs, and it's all chopped up, and they make it in like a tomato sauce. My father used to love it. I never ate it. Then they stopped selling it in New York, and they were selling it only in Jersey. So that's what they, you know, so John was always telling them, "I'll chop you up. I'll make sufrit out of you," and, you know, always abusing, throwing dice at him. And, you know, it was embarrassing. You know, so Joe Ganiscoli, aka Vito from The Sopranos, and Rita Gigante, the daughter of Carmine the Chin Gigante, who was the boss of the Genovese family, are putting together some shows. The first one's going to be May 19th in Long Island. I'll be there at that one. They got some other future dates coming up that are going to be on our social media and on her website. So tickets are going to be available. 4-course dinner, meet and greet with Vito and AKA Joe and Rita. And Rita's going to do some readings. It's going to be fun times. There's going to be new dates. Log on and find out. Go to her website, ritagigante.com, and it'll have all the information there, and you'll be able to purchase tickets. So I want to thank everybody for watching the show, Reform Gangsters. And if you have any trouble with addiction, or you know anybody that's dealing with addiction from drugs and alcohol, please call my helpline at 855-963-2113 and let us help you and start a new life. See you next time.